Let's begin by going over what we'll cover. First, we'll examine what affects blood glucose levels in our bodies. Next, we'll look at how insulin and glucagon work together to maintain balance. Finally, we'll explore what happens when this control system doesn't work properly in diabetes. Our blood glucose concentration needs careful regulation. Too much or too little glucose in the bloodstream can cause serious health problems. The pancreas is the key organ responsible for monitoring and controlling blood glucose levels. It produces two important hormones, insulin and glucagon, that work in opposition to keep blood glucose levels stable. Several factors affect the amount of glucose in our blood. When we eat foods containing carbohydrates, these are digested, and glucose enters our bloodstream from the intestines. At the same time, normal cell metabolism constantly removes glucose from the blood as cells use it for energy. Physical activity, especially vigorous exercise, increases the rate at which glucose is removed from the blood, as active muscles require more energy. When we have excess glucose, it can be stored as glycogen in the liver and muscles for later use. The liver can store a significant amount of glycogen, making it a crucial organ for blood glucose regulation. The level of glucose in the blood must be kept steady. The normal range is quite narrow, and deviations can have serious consequences. This is why the body has developed sophisticated mechanisms to monitor and control blood glucose levels. The body uses a negative feedback system to maintain blood glucose within the normal range. This means that any change away from the normal range triggers responses that counteract the change, bringing levels back to normal. When blood glucose levels rise too high, perhaps after eating a meal rich in carbohydrates, the pancreas detects this change and responds by secreting insulin into the bloodstream. Insulin causes liver cells to convert glucose into glycogen for storage. This removes excess glucose from the blood, bringing levels back down to normal. Insulin also helps muscle and fat cells absorb more glucose from the bloodstream, further reducing blood glucose levels. It does this by causing special glucose transporters to move to the cell membrane, allowing glucose to enter the cells. The overall effect of insulin is to reduce blood glucose concentration by moving glucose from the blood into cells, where it can be used or stored. Conversely, when blood glucose levels fall too low, perhaps during exercise or when we haven't eaten for a while, the pancreas detects this change and secretes glucagon. Glucagon has essentially the opposite effect to insulin. It causes liver cells to convert stored glycogen back into glucose, which is released into the bloodstream. This raises blood glucose levels back to normal. These two hormones, insulin and glucagon, work together in a balanced way to maintain steady blood glucose levels, regardless of whether we've just eaten or haven't had food for hours. This is a classic example of antagonistic hormone action in maintaining homeostasis. Unfortunately, this control system can fail, resulting in a condition called diabetes. There are two main types of diabetes, each with different causes but similar effects. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas cannot produce enough insulin. This is usually caused by an autoimmune reaction where the body's immune system attacks and destroys the insulin producing cells in the pancreas. Without insulin, glucose cannot enter the body's cells and remains in the bloodstream, leading to high blood glucose levels. People with type 1 diabetes need regular insulin injections throughout their lives to control their blood glucose levels. The amount of insulin required depends on several factors, including diet, physical activity levels, and individual metabolism. Modern insulin therapy can be very effective, allowing people with type 1 diabetes to live normal, healthy lives. Type 2 diabetes occurs when body cells become resistant to insulin. The pancreas still produces insulin, sometimes even in larger than normal amounts, but cells don't respond properly to it. This means glucose stays in the blood rather than being taken up by cells, causing high blood glucose levels. Being overweight increases the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, as does lack of regular exercise. Type 2 diabetes often develops gradually, and many people have the condition for years before it's diagnosed. Early symptoms can include increased thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, and blurred vision. Treatment for type 2 diabetes usually involves lifestyle changes, such as improved diet and increased exercise. In more severe cases, medication to increase insulin sensitivity or stimulate insulin production may be needed. Understanding glucose regulation helps us appreciate the complex balancing act our bodies perform constantly. This homeostatic mechanism is critical for maintaining the stable internal environment our cells need to function properly. In our next episode, we'll explore other hormones and their roles in regulating different aspects of body function.